Good speakers speak to be remembered. Great speakers speak to be repeated. In this session, you'll pick up several tools to tell stories that get you remembered, repeated, and rehired to speak time and time again. This process helped out our speaker win the Toastmasters International 1999 World Championship of Public Speaking. He also used these techniques to become the Mid-Atlantic 3-time Salesperson of the Year for Glencoe McGraw-Hill by achieving 233% of goal. This process helped him run a highly successful employment academy for homeless men in Baltimore City, taking them from homeless to home ownership with a 100% job placement rate. Also, to earn the Distinguished Alumni Award from Johns Hopkins University, where he also received his MBA. And to found and co-found 3 6-figure small businesses, including 2 that are still thriving today. He is the author of the Amazon.com #1 bestseller, World Class Speaking in Action. Since uncovering this process, he has spoken in 20 countries, including the US, Canada, England, Jamaica, the Bahamas, Taiwan, Qatar, Hong Kong, China, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Australia, India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, South Africa, Japan, and Ireland. Craig Valentine is the proud father of 2 amazing children and husband of 1 wonderful wife. If you are ready to instantly become a much better storyteller, please help me welcome Craig Valentine.
Dawn, thank you so much. Shout out to Judy Bateman. I see you. I see you. All right. Let me say this. 1999, Dawn, seems like such a long time. It was like the last millennium. Does it still even count for me winning the world champ? I'm not sure. But I'm going to tell you this. Being the world champion is a blessing and a curse. If you had been walking towards me in the Chicago airport 2 days after I won the world championship, you would have seen my wife on one side of me and me carrying this gigantic crystal trophy, right? Just walking through the Chicago airport. And everybody's looking at me like, wow, who is that? Is that, Dawn, I thought I heard somebody say, is that Denzel Washington? Hey, Mary, you didn't have to laugh that hard. But this is when I realized my life would never be the same. This petite lady in a pink dress runs up to me in the middle of the airport. Everybody's watching. And she starts reading the bottom of my trophy. She said, 1999 world champion of public speaking. Wow. Say some things. And I was speechless. But that's what I realized. No matter where I go in life, Janice, people are going to say, would you mind saying some things? So I came to a fundamental understanding about my life and really about yours too. When it comes to speaking, I can no longer get ready to speak. I have to stay ready to speak, right? My new motto is don't get ready, stay ready. And what's the best way to do that? Storytelling. Storytelling. If you have your collection of stories, you're always ready to speak. So I really appreciate what you're doing in this club. But before we get into storytelling, let me just thank you for clapping for me. When I was introduced, you clapped for me. You might say, well, why is that such a big deal? Because believe it or not, some people don't like me. You know why? Think about my title, 1999 World Champion of Public Speaking. I joined Toastmasters in March of 1998. Yeah, got my competent Toastmasters in March of 1999 and won the World Championship in August of 1999 in my very first try. I can, yeah, you're clapping again, but can you feel the haters on this Zoom? Right? Because people come up to me all the time. They say, Craig, you don't even know what it feels like to lose a contest. Yes, I do. I lost a humorous speech contest, Dawn, at the club level. Well, thank you for laughing at my misery. I'll never forget a seasoned Toastmaster named Alan Mish came up to me afterwards and he said, Craig, you can win the World Championship of Public Speaking. I said, what are you talking about? I just lost the humorous speech contest at the club level. He said, that's okay. He said, the only thing wrong with your humorous speech was that it wasn't funny. You ever given a speech you wish you could take back? I promise you that will happen much less often after today, because you're about to pick up some tools you can use to keep your audience on the edge of their seats and make them glad they came. If you're glad you came, raise your hand. See, the tools work, right? So first you're going to pick up some tools on how to craft your story, and then some tools on how to deliver it. But I want to do something different, because I've been doing the same thing for a while. I'm going to do something different. Today, you're going to pick up what I believe is the heart of storytelling, right? There's Heartland Toastmasters, the heart of storytelling. And we'll get into that in a moment. All right, so what we know is we want to be able to tell a story and make a point. Here's an example of me in Dublin, Ireland, sharing a story, and then I'll come back here for the point. Take a look. In fact, raise your hand if you watched any of the Summer Olympics. Oh, I love the Summer Olympics. But I like the 2012 Summer Olympics even better. Because, do you know who the oldest participant in the 2012 Summer Olympics was? Equestrian. Yes. It was a 74-year-old equestrian from Japan. 74-year-old equestrian from Japan. So my 7-year-old son and I are watching this on TV. And of course, all the commentators kept harping on was the guy's age. Right? They just kept saying, he's 74. Can you believe he's 74? By golly, he's 74. Finally, my 7-year-old son looked up and said, well, how old is the horse? About a week later, I couldn't get that question out of my mind, so I Googled it. And they asked this man, they said, well, how long will you continue to compete? Guess what his answer was? He said, I can go on forever, but my horse is 15. And that's when I realized my son's question was much more relevant than I thought, right? And even though he was only 7 years old, my son, not the horse, was only 7 years old at the time, he taught me something very important about, I don't know, self-development, about being great, about being remarkable. And here it is. Never stop asking questions. Never stop asking questions. The moment you stop asking questions is the moment you stop growing. And the moment you stop growing is the moment you fall. Never stop asking questions. So stop right there. Tell a story, make a point. What's the point of that story? Never stop asking questions. People are going to remember that. But think about what Dawn said in the introduction. Good speakers speak to be remembered. Great speakers speak to be repeated. Good speakers speak to be remembered. Great speakers speak to be repeated. So we have to have a way of being repeated. And that's what I want to make sure you pick up in a moment. But before we do, let's look at another really quick story. What do you think is the number one thing? I want some actual answers here. What do you think is the number one thing that stands between most people living their dreams? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Give me some answers here. What's the number one thing that stands between most people living their dreams?
Fear.
Fear. Good. Fear of what? Fear of what?
Fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of success.
Fear of success. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fear of failure, fear of success. Say again, Judy.
Fear of other people.
Fear of other people, negative people. Good. These are all great answers.
Themselves.
And themselves, as the answers keep coming. These are all great answers. But the number one thing is not what you think. See, I used to work for an internet company. And I wanted to go full-time into professional speaking. That was my goal. That was my dream. Raise your hand if you have a goal, or raise your hand if you want to do anything in life. Me too. So I went to the vice president of this company. He was a young guy, good-looking guy, looked like a young David Beckham, right? So I went up to him. I said, John, I'm going to be leaving because it's always been my dream to be a full-time professional speaker. He said, that's your dream, Craig? I said, yes, it is. He said, well, that's great. I really admire you for having one, but you can't leave. I said, hold on now. What do you mean I can't leave? He said, well, Craig, we've been thinking about it, and we're going to raise your salary up to this. Now, salary means the same thing where you are, right? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Nathaniel. Then you see my dilemma. So I said, John, this is not a financial decision. This is about my dream. In fact, I call this a dream decision. He said, okay, I understand. I really do. But how about if we raise your salary up to this? I said, this is not a financial decision. This is a dream decision. Do you know he raised it 4 times? I kid you not. He kept saying, we're going to raise your salary to this. I said, this is not a financial decision. This is a dream decision. Listen to what he said to me.
He said, okay, Craig, how about if we raise your salary to well above 6 figures? I said, dreams are overrated. Come on now. 6 figures. Back then, shoot, that's good money today. I could fill up my gas tank for a week on that kind of salary. I said, but John, before I say yes to you, I got to go home and talk to my wife. So I went home to my wife. I said, honey, I don't know what to do. What do you think I should do? What should I do? And my wife looked up at me with her big brown eyes and said, take the money, fool.
You like my wife, don't you? But if you've been sitting beside my wife and me just a few moments later on our old beat up black leather sofa with the chocolate chip cookies baking in the background, you would have heard her say something that can absolutely change your life. And I know it because it changed mine. She said, Craig, this is all you ever wanted. Ever since we met, this is all you ever talked about. I don't care how much they try to compensate you. Your dream is not for sale. Yeah, Mary. Deep, right? Because most people think the number one thing that stands between them and their dreams is some kind of bad obstacle. That's not it. The number one thing that stands between most people living their dreams is not something bad. It's something good that we settle for. A good job, a good relationship, a good speech. Did you realize that sometimes the enemy of the best is the good? So let me ask you a question. Are you too good to be great? I looked at my wife, I said, see, girl, that's why I married you. My dream, not for sale. That's what you said, right? And I walked back in there the next day and I looked that vice president in his eyes and I was bold, Dawn. I looked him directly in his face and I was firm. And I said to him, my wife said my dream is not for sale, okay? And I left. And Teresa, the next year, in 1 year, I spoke over 160 times in 44 states in 5 countries. And I'm happy to say I've been running my mouth ever since, right? But here's the thing. There's nothing special about me. There's something very special about the advice my wife gave me. No matter how good you are, what you do, don't let that good get in the way of the best. And more importantly, no matter where you are in your life at this moment, with all the stuff that's going on in the world, think back to the words of my wife that your dream is not for sale. Your dream is not for sale. Now stop right there. Tell a story, make a point. What's the point of that story? Your dream is not for sale. You're going to remember it. You're going to repeat it. You're going to repost it. You're going to retweet it. And when I get that buzz, I get that biz, right? So I want you to think about this for a second. How do I know this? I gave that same story in Mysore, India, on the Infosys campus. The next morning, I went to my hotel. I woke up in my hotel room and they had slid a newspaper under my door and I picked it up. Big picture of me on the front cover. But check out what the headline said. Your dream is definitely not for sale, right? Good speakers speak to be remembered. Great speakers speak to be repeated. So we want to tell a story and make a point, but here's a question. I don't know if I should ask it this way or not. Let's keep it clean. No, let's ask the question anyway. You ever had like a drunk uncle? I got people looking at me like I was the drunk uncle. But here's why I'm asking that. You ever seen a story that was all over the place? Yeah. You ever given one? Yeah, me too. And it's because the speaker doesn't start crafting his message in the right place. One of the very first things we need to do when we start to craft our message is come up with what I call a foundational phrase. Write that down. Foundational phrase. So what's a foundational phrase? Don't get ready, stay ready. What's a foundational phrase? Never stop asking questions. What's a foundational phrase? Your dream is not for sale. What do you notice about those phrases? Always be, thank you, Paula. What do you notice about those phrases? They're all what? Give me a gesture at least. They're all short. Yeah, write this down. Your foundational phrase should be fewer than 10 words. Give me a why. Why should it be fewer than 10 words? Feel free to unmute
It's
yourself.
memorable.
It's memorable for who?
Your audience.
Right. And for who else, Deborah?
For us,
I gotta remember it too.
right?
But here's the real reason why it should be fewer than 10 words. Because it forces you to be crystal clear on what your message is. Make no mistake about it. The number one reason the speaker won't get his message across, he's not crystal clear on what his message is. But fewer than 10 words forces you to be crystal clear. Now, as a storyteller, let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered what to keep in your story and what to keep out? Yeah, me too. Write this down. The phrase determines what stays. The phrase determines what stays. If what you say supports your foundational phrase, keep it in. If it doesn't, toss it out. Even if it's great, you can't use it with that story. Got to use it somewhere else. The phrase determines what stays. Now, tell me what this means. No phrase, no stage. What's that mean? No phrase, no stage. And Greg, I see you, and I'm going to respond to your email. No phrase, no stage. What's that mean?
You don't have a foundational phrase, you're not going to get the opportunity to speak in public.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. And that's what I'm saying. What it means is if you don't have a foundational phrase for your story, don't take it to the stage because it's not ready yet. So the question is, well, where do I take it? The answer is take it to Toastmasters. Take it to Heartland Storytelling. Like take it to Toastmasters. They'll give you a foundational. They'll tell you some other things too, but they'll give you a foundational phrase. I'll give you an example. Here's a story that I wanted to tell, but I couldn't tell because I didn't have a point. Now, this was an honest mistake, so don't be mad at me when it comes to this story. Take a look. Here's an example. You ever gone to a drive-through restaurant, placed your order and been misunderstood? Now, I can't mention the name of this restaurant, but its initials are K, F, and C. So imagine this, you're in my passenger seat, we're driving through the KFC, and I always order 3 thighs. That's the only part of the chicken I like. So we get up to the intercom, and she says, welcome to KFC, may I help you? I said, yes, I would like 3 thighs. She said, small or large? And before I could even register it, I just blurted out, do you have large thighs? Yeah, I'm gonna recommend that you never ask anyone that question. And she came back and says, yes, we have small and large sides. How may I help you? But by now I'm just rolling over in embarrassment. And I called a friend of mine that night and he said, Craig, what you say is not always what they hear. Boom. Guess what I have now? A foundational phrase I can use for every communication and leadership speech I give moving forward. So what I'm saying to you is, don't create your speech in a vacuum. This is a collaborative effort. Go out and give your story to your Toastmasters club or friends and family and see what they get from it. And then they can help you just crystallize a foundational phrase. Now, normally I would do an activity here, but I want to go into something else because I mentioned that I want you to pick up what I believe is the heart of storytelling. Raise your hand if you'd like to add humor to your speeches. Never add humor to a speech. Uncover humor within it. I'll say, what's the difference? When you add humor, a lot of times it feels forced. When you uncover it, it's there. It's true. It lives there. Okay, so here's the question. Where are you going to find the humor? Within your stories, within your characters, within your characters' dialogue. Dialogue is what we're going to focus on today. And as you'll see later, within the spaces and faces in between the lines, because that's really where the story lives. But dialogue. But here's the problem. A lot of speakers only use character-to-character dialogue, right? Think about my story and the funny lines in it. Dreams are overrated. Funny line, dialogue. Take the money, fool. Funny line, dialogue. My wife said my dream is not for sale. Funny line, dialogue. But all the humor in that speech came from dialogue. But it was all character-to-character dialogue. I want you to get 5 different types of dialogue that you can use so that you just take your speaking to a whole different level. Is that okay? All right, let's do that. Just go clap your hand once if you want that. Good. Some people even had rhythm. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. In order to do it, we need a reference story. And because it has to do with humor, I want you to actually watch the 2 minutes video so you can hear the audience laughing. And then we'll debrief and I'll show you 4 different types of dialogue from this video, and then we'll add 1 more. Okay, so here's the video. Take a look and we'll debrief. I think this is in Montreal somewhere.
Raise your hand if you feel like sometimes reality hurts. Yeah, now be honest, have you ever stepped on a scale and been forced to face reality? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably looking at me like, Craig, what do you know about stepping on a scale? I mean, look at you. You're obviously built like a Greek statue. I appreciate the compliment. But I can only say that because if you had seen me a few years ago, trust me, you would have seen a lot more of me. In fact, you should have been with my wife and me 6.5 years ago. We're taking my 6-month-old daughter, Tori, to her doctor's appointment. Now, raise your hand if you have kids. Then you know the doctor's always going to measure their length and their weight, right? Somebody said height. Let me explain the length when you turn them. Anyway. Doc walks in with his white coat and glasses. He takes Tori's length. Then he looks at my wife and me and he says, since Tori can't stand yet and she can't seem to sit still, we're going to need another method to take her weight. How about this? Why doesn't one of you step out into the hallway and step on the scale with Tori, and then step on the scale without Tori, and we'll take the difference as her weight? Now, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who just recently gave birth, but my wife was looking at us like, oh, that's a wonderful idea for Craig to do. I said, no problem, I know what I weigh. I jumped up on that scale. I said, give me my daughter. I took my daughter, stripped her down to her diapers. I'm feeling good holding my 6-month-old daughter in my arms. I look down at that scale. I look back at my wife. I look back at that scale. I said, good grief, this is a fat baby.
All right. So again, even with the punchline was inner dialogue. And let me explain that to you. So we have character-to-character dialogue that we talked about before, but we also have inner dialogue. Can you share what you were thinking in a certain moment? I'm thinking, this is a fat baby, right? So here's the key. If you thought it then, you can say it now. And the line is going to land just like it did as if you had actually said it. So if you thought it then, you can say it now. You just need to let the audience know this is what I was thinking back then. So we need to share our thoughts with our audience. And how do you do that? You use a stem, right? The stem will be something like this. And I was thinking, this is a fat baby, right? Or I remember thinking, this is a fat baby. Or I thought, this is a fat baby, right? So whenever I'm coaching people, I like to say, okay, what were you thinking in that moment? And a lot of times we can uncover some humor just from that. Just make sure that your inner dialogue is always in the present moment. And I'm thinking, and I was thinking, this is a fat baby. Not this was, but this is a fat baby. I gotta be quiet. My daughter's actually here. She's home from college now. And she's like, you called me a fat baby. Anyway, let's keep moving. So here's the next one. If you think inner dialogue is great, my favorite tool in public speaking is projected dialogue. Projected dialogue. Think about projected dialogue. What is that? It's when you project, it's when you give dialogue to somebody else based on how they're looking at you. It can be another character in your story. It can be the audience. I don't care. You give dialogue. So I did that twice in that speech. Remember when I said, now I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who just recently gave birth, but my wife was looking at us like, that's a wonderful idea for Craig to do. Did my wife say that? No, she was looking at us as if to say that. That's a wonderful idea for Craig to do. Are you starting to see how much freedom this gives you as a speaker? I mean, this tool gives you so much freedom as a speaker because you can just give line. I did it again with the audience. I said, I know what you're thinking. You're probably looking at me like, Craig, what do you know about stepping on a scale? I mean, look at you. You're obviously built like, I don't know, some sort of Greek statue. Right? They weren't even thinking that, but I still gave them that line. So you can project dialogue onto people based on how they are looking at you. And the way you do that is with another type of stem, the beginning of a sentence, which would be like this. She looked at me as if to say, psh, that's a wonderful idea for Craig to do, right? He was looking at me like, Craig, I don't know what you're talking about. You're looking at me like, oh, Craig, I got it now. Projected dialogue. If you can start to use projected dialogue and inner dialogue, you separate yourself from I would say 95% of the speakers out there. They just don't use it. And by the way, it doesn't always have to be for humor. It can also be for heart. I'll give you an example. There's a story I tell about my speaking hero. I'm about to introduce him. And I was nervous. So I was early in my career. I was in Baltimore and I was nervous. So I went backstage to try to shake off my nerves. Who do you think I run into? My speaking hero. So I said, oh my gosh, I'm Craig Valentine. I won the world championship. So they're allowing me to introduce you today. You're the man who made me want to get into this business in the first place. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Nothing. He said absolutely nothing. He just looked at me as if to say, psh, you don't belong on the same stage. Now, Mary, I don't know how this would affect you, but I got the thing that he's about to get an introduction he did not expect, right? Now, I want you to think about what just happened. It was projected dialogue followed by inner dialogue. I just gave you a whole scene of things that were never said, right? So he looked at me as if to say, you don't belong on the same stage. And that's exactly how he was looking at me. And my immediate thought was, wait till you hear this introduction. Right? So it's very important to use both of those tools. And it might not just be for humor. It can also be for what I call a lift them up to let them down moment. But use it. So what do we have after that? We also have actual audience dialogue. One of the things that I love is when people just speak up and yell out while I'm speaking. And I try to plan that sometimes. And so you heard me do that in the story, right? Because what I did was I said, raise your hand if you have kids or if you're a parent. Then, you know, the doctor's always going to measure their length and trust me, Dawn, somebody's always going to yell out height. They're always going to yell out height. And so what I need to do is highlight that. Somebody said height. Let me explain the length. When you turn them, that actually becomes and if nobody yells it out, guess what I'll do? Somebody in my last audience yelled out height. I'm like, look, so we got to find ways to carry it over. Okay, so sometimes, many times, the funniest things that are said come from your audience. And your job is to repeat them loud enough for people. So that's the actual audience dialogue. So 4 of those were in that story that you just saw. The 5th one, I'm just going to call quotations. Quotations. Never go into a speech alone. Go into a speech with historical figures. Go into a speech with people that have said things in the past. I'll give you an example. When I was in prison visiting, an inmate came up after my presentation. He said, Craig, I'm getting out of here in a few months, man. I'm feeling good about life. And I feel like I'm back on the right track. I said, well, you know, there's a quote by Will Rogers who says, you might be on the right track, but if you just stand there, you'll get run over. Boom. Feel free to bring in quotations from people. Now, here's a caveat. Know who you're quoting. Because there have been some terrible people who've said some pretty good things. So you got to make sure you know who you're quoting. And I always try to do some research on them before. Okay, so those are 5 different types of dialogue that I feel can take you to the next level. And let's just look and see if we can find any of that dialogue in here. You have some ideas on how to craft your message. Let's look at how to deliver it. I need a volunteer, and there might be a really nice prize in it for you. You need a volunteer, and there might be a really nice prize in it for you. So raise your hand if you're willing to volunteer. Okay, let me go with Ilana. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Give her a hand. How you doing, Ilana?
I'm good, and you today?
I'm doing well. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
You pronounced my name pretty good. It's Alana.
Ilana. That was code for no, you didn't. Okay?
Yeah. No one does.
Ilana.
Don't worry.
All right. So Ilana, here's what I'd like you to do. And you got to use your imagination here. I want you to picture like you're in front of maybe 400 people in person, giving a presentation in front of 400 people, not on Zoom, not with a camera, but with 400 people looking at you. And I want you, and this is your audience, and I want you to find out how many of them have ever been to Baltimore, where I am. So what would you ask? How would you say that in front of 400 people, Not in front of a camera, but in front of 400 live people.
I would say, who's here from Baltimore?
Who's here from Baltimore? Good. Okay. I thought you were about to go into your own keynote speech for a second, but that was very good. How would you like a tool you can use to make a deeper connection with your audience than you've ever felt before?
Yeah.
If so, just say yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is a slight edge principle, which means it's a slight change in the way you do things. But if you do it for your entire presentation, Elana, what a difference in how they'll feel your message. Not just hear your message, but feel your message. So Elana, when your audience members leave your speech, hopefully at the end, do you want them to leave thinking, whoa, I really felt like I was part of a group? Or do you want them to leave thinking, whoa, it really felt like Elana was speaking directly to me? What do we want, A or B?
B.
Okay. How many people did Elana just speak to with Who's Here from Baltimore? How many people did she just speak to?
Only the ones from Baltimore.
Now you spoke to your entire audience, right? How many people should she speak to? One. So how can Elana rephrase her question and make it sound and feel grammatically like she's speaking to one rather than 400? Feel free to unmute yourself and yell this out. How can she do that so that it feels like she's speaking to one rather than, what do you think, Deborah?
Have you ever been to Baltimore?
Yes. Have you ever been to Baltimore? Can you, should you, would you, could you, singular, grammatically? Write this down. It will change your public speaking life. Speak to one, but look to all. Speak to one, but look to all. And stick with me, Elana. There are far too many speakers speaking to far too many people far too often. And you'll hear them. They'll say things like, ladies and gentlemen, and friends, and folks, and boys and girls, and societal members, and members of the committee. And you might as well be saying friends, Romans, stop. Speak to one. Now, have you ever heard a speaker say something like, now some of you might be thinking, guess what? There is no some of you. Now you might be thinking. Feel the difference? Or you heard a speaker say, now many of you probably came to the conclusion. Guess what? There is no many of you. Now, in case you've come to the conclusion, speak to one, but look to all. And Elana, I'm going to give you a test. It's called the hallway test. And you can use this to determine whether or not you can take something up on stage. So just take a look at this and I'll come back to you in a second. The hallway test. Watch this. Speak to one, but look to all. Now I'm going to give you a test. This is something that you can do to make sure that you're speaking to one, but looking to all. It's what I call the hallway test. So Heather and I, here's how it goes. If you can walk by one person in the hallway and you can say it, then you can take it up on stage. So Heather and I, we're going to just walk by each other in the hallway and just see what happens. How many of you have ever been to Baltimore? Unless she's civil, we got a problem. Now, watch this. We're going to walk by each other again. Let's see what happens. Have you ever been to Baltimore?
Yeah, I used to live there.
How have it to grace. Now, you see the difference? If I can say it there, I can take it up on stage. All right, so Elana, you got the message?
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to go ahead and rephrase your question. Now, remember, you're in front of 400 people, so you don't need to be looking into the camera. You need to be looking at them. So I want you to deliver. So what would you say? Go ahead and rephrase your question. What would you say?
Let's see here.
And Deborah already said it, so she kind of helped you out. So what could you ask the audience?
Who's ever visited Baltimore?
Say it one more time.
Who's ever visited Baltimore here?
Okay. Now, would I walk up to one person and say, who's ever visited Baltimore?
Have you ever visited
There
Baltimore?
we go. Give Elena a hand. And don't forget the look to all part, right? Don't forget the look to all part, because I had somebody once and we were in an audience of about 400. I gave him the lesson. He walked up to one person afterwards and said, you ever been to Baltimore? Huh? How about you? You been to Baltimore? You look very Baltimore-ish. Have you ever been to Baltimore? That's not what we're doing here. It's going to take you a long time to get through that audience. But thank you, Elana. And I do have a prize in it for you. So I'm going to write your name down and make sure you get it. All right. One more time for Elana. Speak to one, but look to all. I'll give you an example. I want you to watch a quick story. And I want you to notice how I'm just going to be speaking to one. But I also want you to notice something else. The story lives in between the lines. It's not just the lines, it's the looks before and after the lines that really make the story work. Do me a favor, raise your hand if you've ever been in a speech contest. Okay, when I won at the club level, and then I won at the area level, I was going to division. And they were going to hold it at the Red Cross building in Baltimore City. So I get into the building, I go into the elevator. I'm going to go from the first floor to the third floor. As soon as I get on the elevator, there's a guy who comes in and stands next to me. And he looked like he could be a minister or a preacher or something like that. And the moment he saw me, he says, "You're in the contest, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." Without saying anything else, Dawn, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a bottle of oil, unscrewed it, Mary, dipped his finger in it, and started walking towards me. Yeah. And then dabbed me in the forehead. And before I could say anything, he just looked at me and said, "I've just anointed you." I said, "You just what?" I said, "No, I'm a man of faith. What I just did was very important. I just anointed you. You're going to be the one who makes it." Now, I'll be honest, I had no idea what was going on. And plus, I'm black, so I was like, "Am I ashy? Like, what's happening? Why does he keep saying it?" And he just kept saying, "I've anointed you, I've anointed you, I've anointed." Thankfully, the third floor came. And I hopped off that elevator as fast as I could. I got into the contest. Everybody's speaking, and then it's my turn. And I'm in the contest, and I'm going, and I'm flowing and feeling good. And in the middle of my contest speech, my mind goes blank. Keep in mind, this is a contest. Like, if my mind went blank today, Teresa, I would just say, "Where were we?" Right? You can't do that in a contest. you got to be darn near perfect. This had never happened to me before. I had no idea what to do. And I just gave up. And I just started looking around the room. And then my eyes latched onto his. And at that exact moment, everything came rushing back. And I picked up where I left off. Now, here's the interesting thing, Deborah, about where I lost my mind. I was actually supposed to pause. Yeah, I don't know if I was supposed to pause that long, but I was supposed to pause. So I picked up where I left off. And after the contest master came up and said, "And the winner of today's division contest is Craig Valentine." And all these people rushed the stage. And you know what the first thing they said to me was, "Man, the reason you won? That pause. Oh my goodness, what a pause. What an amazing pause. What a pause." And all I could think was, "Well, you know, I am anointed."
That's good.
Do you know he never claimed me? No, there are people who said, "I helped Craig Valentine win the world championship." No, they didn't. He actually helped me. He just never claimed me. You know, in fact, I've never seen him in my life again. He literally just came into my life, lifted it, and left. More I think about it, isn't it appropriate that we met in an elevator? Because he met me at one level and left me at another. So I want you to think about that story right there, Ivan. It wasn't just about the words. It wasn't just about the lines. It was about this. It was about this. It was about that. It was about this. It was about this. It was about this. It was about that. It was about this. It's about this. It's about that. It's not just about the lines. So how do you know what to do gesture-wise? I follow Dale Carnegie, who said, if you can go back and relive it and be under the influence of your own emotions when you relive it, all the right gestures, all the right facial expressions will come. It'll be all natural. Right? So you have some ideas on how to craft your message. You have some ideas on how to deliver it. Let's look at how to sell it. Okay, let's look at how to sell it. Nod your head if you agree with me on this. When you're in speaking, you're in sales. When you're in leadership, you're in sales. When you're in parenting, you're in sales. The best of all of those embrace that. The least effective ones avoid it. And here's the sad part. You only have to master one formula. And this is it. Never sell a product, always sell what? What do you think? Never sell a product, always sell what?
Results.
The results. Who said that?
Greg.
Hey, Greg, okay. Never sell the result. He must have seen me speak. Absolutely. Never sell a product, always sell the results. Never sell a service, always sell the results. If you're in leadership, never sell an idea, always sell the results. You can sing along now, even if nobody can hear you. If you're in leadership, never sell change, always sell the results. Think about going for an interview, never sell yourself. Well, you know, I have 15 years of experience. Nobody cares. Always sell the results. Case in point, many decades ago, I went to buy my first car ever in life. And I went to the dealership. And the salesperson came up to me and he says, "Are you looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Great. Let me tell you about it. This car has these types of brakes, this type of engine, this type of window, What's he trying to sell me? The car. I just said, never sell a product, always sell what? The results. Thank you. So I said, "Thank you, but no thank you. I'm not interested." I went to a different dealership, same day, different salesperson, same car. Now, I got to be honest, Dawn, this man must have anticipated where I was emotionally at that point in my life. You know, I was young and single and looking to mingle. Feel free to use that one. And he walked up to me and says, "Are you looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're going to look good in that one." He said, "Yeah, man, you're going to be flying down the road. The wind's going to be blowing through your hair. And the girls, let me tell you, the girls will be all over you." What do you think I did? I said, "Where do I sign?" Right? He made the sale not because he sold me the car, but he sold me what? The results. And he lied. I was lonely in that car. Just me and my payment. So don't lie, but definitely don't sell the product, the service, idea, change, or yourself. Always sell the results. Raise your hand if a year from now you'd like to be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. Good. Then for absolutely free, for no fee, you can go to one of my websites, which is 52speakingtips.com. That's 52speakingtips.com. And every week for a year, you're going to get an audio lesson from me. And by the end of that year, Nathaniel, you're going to be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. Now stop right there. I need you to speak up here. What was the result? What was the result?
3 times better.
3 times better. Good. What was the resource?
Free
Website.
website.
That's all you heard was free. All you heard was That's usually what somebody says, though. And I gotta see the laughs come from your audience, right? So yeah, what you heard first was the result, and then you heard the resource, right? So here's the addition to that formula: never sell a product, always sell the result. Always put the result before the resource. If you're in leadership, always state the result before the request. Because if I did it the other way around, it would have sounded like this. Raise your hand if you'd like to receive 52 emails from me. Right? I don't think my opt-in rate would be as high. So never sell a product, always sell the result, always put the result before the resource, always state the result before the request. Raise your hand if you'd like a really big prize that will help you be a better speaker. Okay, I want to give one away. But before I do, you got to understand the value of it. Make sure I have time here. Yeah, I do. Okay. If you had picked up my phone in the year 2000, you would have heard a woman from the Michigan Consolidated Gas Company say to me, "Craig, we want you to come out here and speak. And for 45 minutes, we're going to pay you $3,500. Now, this is the year 2000. I am the world champion of public speaking, but I'm still a newbie speaker. So this was like my first high paid keynote speech. So I was very excited, but what else do you think I was? Scared to death. And to make things worse, they flew me out first class. I get to the airport, Dawn, they swept me up in a black limo. Yeah, took me out, wined and dined me. Drove me over to a 5-star hotel, swept me up the next morning in that same black limo, drove me over to the event. As I'm walking up on stage, the lady who convinced her higher-ups to hire me tucks into my jacket pocket a check for $3,500. I'm going out of my mind. Deborah, I looked this audience directly in the eyes and I gave them a $150 speech. I failed miserably. It was so bad that the lady who convinced her higher-ups to bring me in, I mean, she really went to bat for me. By the time I got off that stage, she wouldn't even look me in the eyes. I was absolutely devastated. Even the limo driver was looking at me like, man, I still got to take you back. Now that was the year 2000. Fast forward 22 years to today. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this because you know where I came from. My rehire rate today exceeds 91%. You know what that means? Thank you, Deborah. That means if you brought me in once, chances are you're going to bring me back again, Dawn Tucker. 91% of the time. So that begs a question. And I want an answer to this. What made the difference? What made the difference between me being on a company's wall of shame? They never want to see my face again. And you know what? They're not going to. You know why? They don't even exist anymore. I think I put them out of business. I was that bad. But what made the difference between that and companies calling me up today saying, Craig, we want you to come out and speak. We're willing to pay you whatever. And we want you to come back for our annual event. When are you free?
You never gave up.
Never gave up. Good. What else?
We're being ready.
Stay ready. Good. What else?
Just practice.
Practice. Good.
Perseverance.
Now let's go with that one, Janice, because Darren LaCroix is one of my best friends in the world, and he has stage time, stage time, stage time. But I said to Darren one time, I said, what if you get a whole lot of stage time, but you're practicing the wrong things? Can't you be reinforcing negative habits? And sometimes those are hard to undo. So I'll tell you exactly what made the difference. After my embarrassment in the year 2000, which you shouldn't have to go through, and you won't if you listen closely, I rededicated myself to the art of public speaking. And I invested thousands upon thousands of dollars in coaching. My coach was charging me $4,000 per day. Yeah. And I went through year after frustrating year, just trying to figure out a process that works. I'm like, just give me a process that works some of the time. And Desiree, I'm happy to say that I got a process that works basically all the time. And I'm even happier because I was able to bottle up this process and put it into a system called the Speak and Prosper Academy. Everything that made the difference between where I was then and where I am today is in this system. Imagine what it can do for you. But here's the thing. If you were to go online, it's $797. But what I'm going to do is hold a quick contest. And whoever gets the answer right and first gets lifelong access to the Speak and Prosper Academy, worth way more than $797. So I'm going to ask a question. The first person to get it right, whether you do it verbally or do it in the chat, will get lifelong access to the Speak and Prosper Academy, which also includes monthly calls with me, with the group. Okay, so here we go. The premise I'm trying to get across here is specifics stick. Specifics stick. The lady who ran up to me in the Chicago airport and started reading the bottom of my trophy, what was she wearing?
A pink dress.
Deborah gets the prize. Let's give her a hand. Deborah. Deborah, you get lifelong access to the Speak and Prosper Academy, including the 8 home study courses and make people laugh, give a keynote, master back of the room sales, all the things you need if you'd like to be a successful professional speaker. So again,
Hallelujah.
thank you. So Deborah gets that, and I'll make sure I write your name down. Now it is available, right? It's $797, but I'm going to do something because when I first introduced this a few years ago, I gave an introductory price of $497. I'm going to do something special here today. It's $797, but I'm going to waive the shipping. Okay, so let's keep it moving now. And we're going to, no. It's online. All right. So it's not $797. It's not $497. But for the first 10 people who decide to take advantage of this, you get lifelong access to the Speak and Prosper Academy for $297. And here's how you can do it. You can go to this QR code right here, or you can visit speakandprosperacademy.com. And for the next 15 minutes after this call, I'm going to have the price set at $297. So if you go to speakandprosperacademy.com, you can get that now. Okay, so before I close shop, what I'd like to do is I want you to think about, for the next 30 seconds, one thing that jumped out at you that you feel like you can use from this program. Okay, and then we'll close shop. So one thing that jumped out at you, whether it was how to craft, whether it was how to deliver or whether it was how to sell. One thing that jumped out at you that you feel like you can use.
Speak
So
to the,
yell it
yeah.
out.
speak to one person.
Sal.
But look to
Have a
all.
foundation phrase,
Foundational phrase fewer than how many words?
10.
Good. Yeah. And speak to one, look to all is going to change your speaking life. I promise you. You're going to feel a connection you never felt before. What else? Stay ready. Don't get ready. Stay ready. Thank you, Mary. What else?
Never sell a product, sell the results.
Never sell a product. Always sell the results. Don't sell
Like
a
that.
service. Always sell the results. Yeah. Let the audience have some of the humor. Like we said, somebody said free, right? That wasn't planned, but we got to repeat it. Get that laugh. Good. What else? Hopefully, some of the types of dialogue, right? Because the dialogue, what you would put in quotation marks, that's really the heart of a story. That's what pumps life into a story. If you ever watch a story and you say, when did that story really take off? It's when you started to hear some dialogue from the characters. What else? A couple more. All right, then let's do something here and close shop. Has it been helpful?
Yes.
Yes,
All
Yeah.
right, good.
Yes.
Okay, so inner dialogue. Thank you, Paula. I just want to close by saying this. I had time to do it. A lot of people will look at me and say, well, Craig, of course these strategies work for you because when it comes to speaking, you're a natural. Nothing could be further from the truth. Dawn, I don't even know if you know this, but I'm the least likely person on this call to be the world champion of public speaking. I'm the least likely person on this call to be a communicator of any kind. Because when I was 10 years old, something very disturbing happened to me for a 10-year-old. I was walking in the Columbia Mall where I lived. I mean, I didn't live in the mall. I was just, you understand what I'm saying? I was just walking there. I lived over near Sears. No, I was just walking there. And I was by myself and I ran into a father of one of my friends. I'll refer to him as Mr. H. And Mr. H walked up to me. Again, I'm 10 years old by myself. And he looked at me and he said, hey, little Craigie, how you doing? And I told him. He said, what's going on in your life? And I told him, but he kept looking at me really strange. And then finally, he looked down at me and told me that I had a lisp. You know what a lisp is? A speech impediment. Here are his exact words. He said, Craigie, don't talk anymore, because every time you open your mouth, you remind me of Daffy Duck.
Whoa.
What does that do to a 10-year-old kid?
shut you up.
Yeah, my confidence, my esteem, everything plummeted. And for the next 4 or 5 years, you could not get a word out of me. The popular motivational speaker, Les Brown, says, when you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are. I didn't want people making fun of me. But finally, after about 4 or 5 years, when I forced myself to face reality, and I started going through what I now call my 4 R's to remarkable results. I can stand before you today as the 1999 world champion of public speaking. And that's not even the best part. Here's the best part, and I promise you this. The same people who kicked you when you were down will pat you on your back as you move forward. Because you persevered and you're remarkable. And the case in point, I'll close with this, is October 1999, 2 months after I won the world championship. I'm at the Supreme Sports Club parking lot in Columbia, Maryland, where I go work out, as you can tell. And I'm in the parking lot and I overhear a familiar raspy voice coming towards me. And I couldn't believe that 18 years after our incident in the mall, I was coming face to face with an older Mr. H. And I hadn't seen him in a while. And he walked up to me and he had those same strange eyes. And he looked at me and he said, hey, Craig, how you doing? So I'm fine, Mr. H, and how are you? As clearly as I could. He said, I read your articles. I saw you in the newspaper. Man, that is wonderful what you've been able to accomplish. He said, but Craig, that one article, I can't believe that at the tender age of 10, some man would have the nerve to call you Daffy Duck. I said, Mr. H, I don't quite know how to tell you this, but it was you. He said, it was me. I said, yeah, you don't even remember? He said, no, Craig, but I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Have you ever had 18 years of anger? Desiree, all this stuff started to rise up, but I couldn't cry, but I couldn't hold back my mouth. And I said, Mr. H, Then I said, Mr. H, Don't apologize. I would not be the speaker. I would not be the world champion. I would not even be the man I am today if you hadn't stopped and confronted me and made me face reality. So I said, Mr. H, thank you. But as far as you not even remembering what you did to me, I think that's despicable. Thank you so much.
God.
Thank you. Back to you, Dawn.
God bless you, Craig.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.